Hi there, this is Jim from Trek World.
A viewer recently told me if you had a gorilla suit in the 1960s, you could get work anywhere. Janos Prohaska had not one gorilla suit, he had eight. Each with its own name, as you can see in the flyer that he used to leave at every studio office that he could find. He began his career in 1959 playing an ape on the TV series Riverboat, and he never looked back. We're going to take a look at the fascinating body of work that Janos had in Star Trek and other places. The first creature that we will visit with is when we take a look at the Mugato from A Private Little War. Now, the Mugato was actually a white gorilla costume that Janos had used several times in his career. For its use in Star Trek, he borrowed the horn and ridged spine from another one of his suits that he had originally called Brutus. This would be the only time in Star Trek that Janos would be listed in the credits. But what's this? The name Mugato was actually used in the later scripts of this episode. However, DeForest Kelley could not pronounce the name correctly, so they changed it to Mugato. But unfortunately, during the entire filming, both Shatner and Kelley pronounced the name as Mugato.
A Mugato attacked him.
Mugato, but
Now, 5 decades later, all the different words and pronunciations were covered by the Star Trek Lower Decks episode Mugato, which made the fact that the ape is known under several slightly different names canon. Now, I'm sure a lot of you out there will probably tell me that you already knew that, and I'm very happy if you did, but I will admit to you, I didn't. When I actually did the screenshot of the credits, I couldn't believe what I saw, which is the whole purpose of me making this little extra thing here about the name.
If you have any videos, photos, or documents that you would like to donate to us, please feel free to send them to jim@trek-world.com or submit them via the web at submit.trek-world.com.
So moving on, the creature first appeared in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea in 1967. Then, in the very same year, it appeared in Star Trek, although it had been modified to include, obviously we spoke about it a moment ago, the dinosaur-styled horns and skeletal fins along the back. Finally, it showed up one last time in Here's Lucy in 1969. It was one of several ape suits that Janos owned, and it actually had its own production name, Snowpuff. Now, the second creature that we're going to take a look at has somewhat of a legendary backstory among Star Trek fans. One day, Janos arrived to see Bob Justman and Gene Kuhn with a custom-designed creature. The costume was a large pancake-shaped glob of gook with a thickened raised center and fringe around its circumference. That's the way that Bob Justman described it. Gene and Bob were completely unprepared for what would happen next. Bob Justman would describe it this way. Suddenly, the blob skidded around the corner, making straight for us. Then it stopped, curiously, backed away, and rotated completely in place. The blob gathered itself up, quivered, made a whimsical up and down movement, grunted, and skidded away again, leaving behind a perfectly round white egg. So obviously, the Star Trek episode that it inspired was The Devil in the Dark. However, the creature was never used again in Star Trek. But most importantly, at least to me, is several years later, as a boy of only 8, this episode introduced me to Star Trek and would forever change my life. The next creatures we're going to be taking a look at were 2 of the alien races that were kept in cages by the Telosians. To the right of the photo, you can see one of the publicity shots that Janos used to promote the bird costume that he had originally created for Outer Limits. And his self-promotion worked. This was his second most popular creature, right behind the gorilla suits. Now, as filmed for the cage, we would only see it briefly as Pike prepares to escape the menagerie. The creature moves around a little bit, but it never actually turns to face the camera full on. Also, it only actually occupied 4 seconds of screen time. The reason? The director, Robert Butler, said that every time he saw the creature, to him, it just looked like a giant chicken. And he felt that that meant that it didn't fit in the atmosphere of the scenes he was trying to shoot. Moving on to another one, a year before it would be seen in The Cage, the creature we're now looking at was introduced in The Outer Limits as a Megazoid. Now, interestingly enough, when we see this creature for the first time in Outer Limits, it is being kept in a zoo where alien creatures from different worlds are put on a display through a reinforced clear window. This turns out to be the exact same way it would be handled for The Cage. Now, at the same time, during the second season of Star Trek, the creature will show up in the first of 2 episodes of Bewitched as a Macedonian dodo bird. The second appearance of the creature on that show in 1972 would mark the very last time that it would be used. But until then, it still had a couple other appearances. The creature was featured in a 1966 episode of Lost in Space, and perhaps one of the rarest Janos appearances of the creature was in a 1966 TV show called It's About Time, a comedy series by Sherwood Schwartz of Gilligan's Island and Brady Bunch fame. The basic plot of the series was about astronauts who find themselves stuck in the past. The series came and went in a single season, and most people have no memory that it ever existed at all. Which is nothing short of a miracle that I was actually able to find, however small, at least some part of the video clip showing you its use. Now, next up is the Empyrean from the Outer Limits episode Second Chances. It was briefly seen near Captain Christopher Pike and other cages in the Star Trek pilot. Unlike the bird creature, it would end up with more time on the screen, a grand total of about 13 seconds, during which we get a really nice look at this creature. And of course, the creature initially appeared in the Outer Limits just before The Cage was filmed. But notice that from the nose down on the face mask, it's completely different than what was used in Star Trek. My thoughts were that they wanted the snout-like nose to make the creatures seem more dangerous on a guttural level.
Hi, my name is Daniel W. Ring. I've kind of kept up with Trek World on YouTube. Shane Johnson just recently passed away. Shane Johnson did 2 books in the Star Trek universe, Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise and World to the Federation. They came out in the late 80s. I think something should be mentioned about this. He's 64 years old. Again, this is somebody who was latent and kind of unlamented, sadly. Russell Bates and David Wise, both of them have passed away. Again, unlamented, unnoticed, completely. Something to think about.
Janos was constantly soliciting work from every studio and network he could find. Very much like P.T. Barnum, he was a master at self-promotion, as you can see here in these newspaper ads that he ran regularly over the years in Hollywood. Now, by the late 1960s, Janos had been joined by his son, who would also wear their creations in TV and movies. Unfortunately, this father and son relationship ended abruptly on March 13th, 1974, while returning home from shooting scenes for ABC's Primal Man. The entire cast and crew boarded a small plane for Sierra Pacific Airlines Flight 802. They left Bishop, California to end up at Los Angeles, but shortly after its nighttime takeoff at about 8:28, the propeller-driven aircraft simply crashed in the foothills of the White Mountains at 6,100 feet and exploded into flames. All 4 members of the flight crew and all 32 passengers were killed in the crash. After all of these years later, the cause of the crash still has never been determined. And just like that, the career of an amazing Hungarian who came to Hollywood and made his mark and became one of the most popular actors for portraying animals was taken from us too soon. But it is my hope that with videos like this that can document what he did, that we will never truly forget the work that this gentleman did for us on Star Trek. This is not a conclusive, exhaustive list of the work that Janos did. I very strongly recommend that you go out to IMDb. You can even hit up Wikipedia, hit up all the normal internet sources, and read about the other things that this gentleman did. He was on everything you could possibly imagine. He touched a lot more lives than either you or I probably even imagined.
So now let's get up with the fun stuff, like this right over here.